Today, we're going to talk about how workplaces can best prepare for Gen Z. Gen Z, or those born close to Y2K, are entering our workforces and there is no looking back. They are forcing all of us to view life, work, and health through a different, more meaningful lens. And to recruit, retain, and promote the best this generation has to offer, we've called in Radina Walsh, founder, trainer, and talent manager of Vox Advisory. Radina is a psychologist and remote talent advisor based in Ireland. Originally from Bulgaria, she has lived around the globe and offers our audience a unique perspective on Gen Z trends that are affecting how we live, interact, and work. For those of us in the US, she puts our progress and context within the world stage and identifies where we lead and lag in important topics like workplace skilling, well-being, and DE&I. We cannot wait to share her insight and expertise with the HRMorning audience. Radina, welcome to Voices of HR.
Pleasure is all mine, Berta. Thank you for inviting me.
So one of the most exciting aspects of having conversations with experts like you is that some started in the recruiting HR space and some did not. You have this interesting path that led you to remote talent advising. Would you share a bit of your story and why you chose this HR discipline, or maybe better yet, how this discipline chose you?
Of course. Well, it's actually a very short story. I've always felt that I wanted to work with people. Was super interested in how we work, what motivates us, and how we can become better in what we're doing, whether it's related to your professional journey or your personal path. And I love to say that psychology chose me. So I actually studied this in the university, and there were several options once I graduated. On one side, I had the traditional human resources path. And then I was thinking about the teaching element, but I felt at the age of 23, I wouldn't have the same credibility. And the third option was the clinical psychology, which back then wasn't that popular. So, as you can imagine, and knowing my story, I chose option number one. And recruitment really resonated with who I am as a human. It really gave me the opportunity to build up my skills when it comes to communication, understanding motivation, working with different type of people, understanding more about the corporate world. So I jumped straight away into the executive search world back in 2010. So wow, 13 years ago. And I have loved every second of my talent acquisition journey. Even now, sometimes I'm thinking, gosh, I really miss having 30 CVs to review and 20 interviews for this week. But yeah, I believe that human resources was always going to be my field, blended with psychology. And now, in this thriving remote space, I guess I was one of these lucky people to combine all of these three passions of mine into one.
What a great story. And what a great transformation, right? From where you started and your degree, because I think so many HR professionals start in different places and HR offers so many different disciplines and you're able to kind of pivot and decide which direction to take in the middle, like you did. So speaking of generations in the workplace, we really teed this up as a focus on Gen Z. And I suspect from when you were interviewing back in 2010 to where we are today with Gen Z in 2023, things have changed quite a bit. So this Gen Z is standing ready to append what we know today as recruiting, how we cultivate them within the workplace, how they get the most out of their career and their life. What excites you most about Gen Z?
Wow, this is such a broad topic, and I'm delighted that you focused on the fact that things have changed. It's been 13 years, which for some generations might not be that long. However, the fourth industrial revolution, the fact that everything is digitalized these days.
Mm.
This generation is the first of its kind that is born with Google. So there you go.
Mm.
What I'm excited about, loads of different things, and as you heard me starting about how they perceive the world through their digital lens, I feel that one thing that we don't give them enough credit for yet
Mm.
is that this generation learns a lot quicker than the previous generations. I'm a
Oh.
millennial, and they put me in their back pocket right away.
Mm.
It's phenomenal how quickly they can understand complex concepts, how quickly they can find different solutions. So they're incredibly resourceful based on my interaction with them. And they really can master a skill, in particular, let's say a hard skill such as sales or marketing. They can really master it within a short period of time, much shorter than the other generation. So within 8 months, I have seen people really thriving in their roles. And I can only think about how it is for the employers, but for me, coming from the recruitment world, this is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So that really lends, I do think Gen Z on the other side really gets a bad rap sometimes because they are so assertive in wanting certain things from work, and from their life. And, it's probably what some of us, from 20 years ago, what we actually aspired out of our career, but we're too afraid to ask, maybe. This generation isn't afraid to ask. So, what are they asking for when it comes to recruiting? What are they expecting from their employer that maybe employers need to think about or change in order to adapt the workplace for Gen Z?
I totally agree with you. 100%. They are not afraid.
Mm.
They are not afraid to speak of their mind. They are not afraid to leave if a place
Mm.
doesn't match their expectations. So, what we used to call back in the day job hoppers, right?
Mm.
10 years ago, job hopper would be someone that changes, wow, every year you're in a new place, or even every 2 years for some industries. Now, some of these Generation Z young expert, they are changing every 8 months, every 10 months, and
Mm.
they are really not afraid to jump in a new ship if they don't feel appreciated, if they don't feel that they are growing, learning, that they are getting exposure. So I love your question in terms of what the employers should take into consideration, what Gen Z are asking. Gen Z are a very socially aware generation. They are incredibly eager to understand the world around them as quick as it's possible. So they do demand a lot of learning. And this learning, yes, it
Mm.
happens on the job, but they really disrupt the way we learn, the way we perceive information, how quickly we can do that. So the element of continuous upskilling and reskilling, for them, I see as a must. This is something that, and I've interviewed quite a lot in the last 10 years, members of the Generation Z. Um, what I have seen is that they really ask for, on one side, their learning curve, how
Mm.
it's going to be, what kind of opportunities they would have, which is why a lot of the smart organizations have really boosted their internal mobility. They have really created
Mm.
programs that encourage this kind of knowledge sharing in between the different divisions, the different roles, the different departments. The second piece is transparency and open communication. And they really bring it to a whole different level in my experience. I feel that whenever I was asked questions, they were truly seeking this honest response. What do you like about working here? What do you perceive as important as part of your culture in this organization? And it was pretty interesting for me to understand that, yes, of course, the financial gain is important for them as much as it's for every
Mm.
generation out there, but they really want to bring themselves to work. They really want to be their authentic selves, to be accepted as they are. They demand inclusion. They are not
Mm,
seeking it as part of the nice benefits, maybe something that my generation was looking for,
mhm,
the millennials. They demand transparency in every decision. They demand transparency in terms of how people are treated internally, what are the different policies and practices. Just because they have access to so much information, they can fact check everything
mhm,
and they question it. As you said it yourself, they are not afraid to question, is that right or is that wrong for me?
mhm,
If it doesn't feel right, I'm going to leave.
mhm. It makes me think about culture, and our culture's ready for this generation because I think the world of the past is are bosses who don't want to be questioned, who don't want to be challenged, who have people on their team who expect more, both from the boss, from the company, from opportunity. And what you're telling me is these individuals who maybe just got out of college, who maybe have a year or two of experience, are challenging, are asking the right questions, want to do more. So that kind of harkens back to what kind of boss do these people need? What what type of boss will Gen Z thrive under that companies need to take notice and maybe change up their leadership training?
This is one of my favorite teams, and I'm really happy you brought it up. I'll give you an example from my past. When I was starting at LinkedIn quite a few years ago, we went through a very robust training, onboarding in the first
Mm,
1 week when we joined the organization, where we were introduced to the culture, the different values, how decisions are made in the
mm,
organization. So, this level of transparency. And I would never forget my boss's boss, so the HR director for the whole Europe, Middle East, and Africa, came on our last day and she said something that stays with me until now even. We are not expecting you to retire here. It's okay if you leave.
mm,
You're going to leave. Maybe you leave in a few months, maybe you leave in a couple of years, maybe you stay 10 years. But our commitment is that you're going to be a better professional and a better person after you leave this organization.
mm,
And I forgot the whole 7 days of culture and values training, every single thing. These words stayed with me. And for me, this kind of open and honest dialogue, very
mm,
much to the point, very much without all the fluff, without the, as we call it in some countries here, blah, blah, blah. It really sparked something in me. And I revealed, that later in my career, I felt that this is something that I want to bring to each of my employees, each of the partners I work with, this kind of level of leveling the ground. You are going to be better professional. I want to work with you. I want to show you the way. I want to help you. And whatever you decide to do, this is something that is tangible, that is going to stay with you. So, to go back to your initial question about the kind of boss that Gen Z would thrive under, I would say, first and foremost, is the human connection.
mm,
This is a generation that has spent so much time online. They are absolute pros on everything on the social media. They wake up with social media. They go to bed. They everything is about that. Um, so they would see right through you. If you go
mm,
with the traditional culture training, values training, let's print these 5 values and have them on our desk. This is not going to work.
mm,
The kind of manager that they would appreciate highly is, first of all, going to establish a human connection. I'm here to help you. Yes, I'm more senior, but I want to learn from you as well. This is something that I also use in all of my lectures and my training. Whenever I meet someone on the first lecture, I say, yes, I'm your lecturer, but I want to learn from you more than
mhm,
you're going to learn from me. And usually the reaction is pretty shocking, but I feel the human connection comes first. The second piece is flexibility. but giving guidance. Flexibility is something that each one of us craves for, an element of being free to decide how you organize your day, what you put in terms of input output. It's not about measuring the 9 to 5 productivity, it's about achieving results that really matter. Yes, but these are young people. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't give them a frame, they'll get lost very quickly with this
Mm.
fantastic freedom and flexibility. So, my best advice for a leader or a future leader would be, don't forget the human element, give them flexibility to be themselves, to be free, but give them guidelines and ask if they need you, because they are not afraid to ask for help, but sometimes a little nudge, hey, I'm here to support you, would do magic.
So, one of the areas that I think is one of the greatest concerns for HR and for any organization is the mental health of their employees. And the pandemic turned all of us upside down. But particularly this younger generation seems to have more challenges than others when it comes to mental health, particularly in the workplace. And that's why I wrote the book for Lauren and her whole generation, the Gen Z generation coming in, because there's so many bullies in the workplace. There's so many who don't want to see you succeed, particularly women and those that are high performers. How can organizations and HR help prepare the organization so that mental challenges do not become an issue for Gen Z? Is it changing the culture or addressing bullies right out of the gate, identifying who they are, not tolerating them? Where do you think the biggest hang up for Gen Z is going to be in the workplace, mental health wise?
See, this is a complex problem. On one
Mm,
side, you have the interest of the company, right? And you mentioned two very important things, the bullies and the high performers. Unfortunately, in some occasions, these can be the same people. And if you're a high performer and you know that you are very successful, you bring a lot of success to your organization, whether it's revenue, whether it's any kind of other recognition, you know that you can get away with a lot of stuff. And sometimes this kind of toxicity is not addressed exactly because these are perceived as future talent, high potential, and things like that, which is very sad. And
mhm,
on the other hand, you have companies that, even when I started my career, the only kind of benefit that was related to health was the Employee Assistance Program, the EAP.
mhm,
And you
yeah,
know what? Actually, we did a research, and then we made a comparison back at LinkedIn. Only 8% of the employees in general have availed of the EAP, which is incredibly sad.
mm,
And this is an opportunity for you to look after not only your physical, your financial health, your emotional, your mental health. So the program exists, yet it's not popular. A lot of the big organizations and even smaller organizations have it. But thinking about Gen Z and how special they are from the sense of they have been exposed to a lot more content, a lot more noise than
mhm,
us or the
mhm,
previous generations. And that leads, yes, to one side, on one side, that leads to a lot of positives, such as the being able to be competent on a lot of different topics, grasp knowledge quickly. However, it's overwhelming.
mhm,
And unfortunately, what I have seen from my practice, especially the last 2 years, as you said, the global pandemic didn't make things easy on any
mhm,
one of us. I see increased anxiety. I see people at the age of 23 or 24 with burnout, people
wow,
at the age of 25 going for egg freezing procedures because they are too stressed to have kids now. Things like that are unfortunately not just one or two examples. It's becoming pretty much the norm, and the stigma around burnout finally, I believe, is being removed to a certain extent. I do a lot of work with Africa, with the Middle East, with countries where we have even more complexities related to religion, related
Mm,
to perception, related to their culture as a country. And these kind of conversations, open conversations about mental health, they are not accepted yet. So
mm,
it's quite difficult when you're a young person experiencing all these symptoms, not knowing what is wrong with you, not having the same access like people in the European Union, like
mm,
where I am at the moment, or people in the US. Um, it's difficult how to even start the conversation with them.
mhm,
Being an advisor is helpful because I am quite impartial, I'm quite objective, right?
mhm,
They are not feeling comfortable speaking with HR about this or with their direct managers because they perceive their managers as someone who has this power and is pretty
mm,
distant from them, right? So they don't find this support that they really, really need. And some of the tips that I've given to the startups that I have supported lately in the last 2 years is bring more awareness through resources, right? It's the simplest, the cheapest, the easiest thing that you can do for your teams is dedicate one day. And this is an example that I'm giving from one of the last companies I worked with. We created Mindful Thursday, and
mm,
literally in their Slack, which is used by all of the
mhm,
300 people that work there in the different countries in Africa, we were encouraging people to post one good practice that helps them be better in their day, whether it's
mm,
related to time management, whether it's related to relaxation, yoga, meditation. And I'm talking about medium range age bracket of 26, I think.
mm,
And it was really interesting that one thing led to another. And we created this nice domino effect where people started availing more and more of the EAP. People started opening up a bit more. We facilitated a couple of lunch and learn sessions as well, where people can open up about their own journey. Slowly and steadily, with small steps, this was something that helped um, the people there to feel okay, I'm not alone in this struggle. I can find support and I can find understanding more than anything else.
mhm. That's fantastic because they do seem to want to stay connected. I think it's sometimes more difficult in human-human interaction, which is what they will experience in the workplace unless they are fully remote. But the but having Slack and having that communication, I think they probably feel it feels very natural to them.
Yes, yes, exactly. Combining technology and human connection, I guess this
Yes.
is probably where the key to success might be for the foreseeable future.
And I suspect that if you're a manager in an organization, Gen Z is entering the workplace, that this is just standard operating procedure, that you should be very aware that they do struggle with mental anxiety and mental issues, and that you should be able to identify it and be able to provide the resources that they need within your organization.
Hopefully that will become the norm, and it's not going to be
Mhm,
something special, something that we need to constantly remind people of. It's I've seen some good practices back in my own country, which makes me quite proud. I'm originally from Bulgaria, and
mhm,
I have been chatting to a lot of my ex-colleagues from work and from the university as well, and they share that a lot of the tech companies over there are even encouraging people to sign up for open sessions with organizational psychologists. Some of them have even contracts with them. They come on
mm,
site, they facilitate group sessions or sometimes one to one, depending on availability. So, this is becoming a bit more promoted in a country where traditionally these kind of things are not really spoken of. So
Mhm.
this made me quite happy to hear that such practices are encouraged by the companies, some obviously more international organizations, yet this is something that each one of us needs, regardless of whether you're Generation Z, Y, X, or Boomer.
Yeah, and I suspect, one of the biggest antidotes to mental frustration is really focusing your energy on what matters. And Gen Z really seems to be educating all of us other generation, and they're really starting to figure it out that it's not just about going to work for 80 hours a week and constantly taking on more responsibility, sometimes without paying a title. They want a life. Can you give us some examples of how big of a deal work life, whether you call it balance or um, trying to make it all work together, both work and life? Why is this? Like, why is it so important for them to have a life and to have a career?
Yes, and that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Hmm,
I call this work-life integration, right? Because
there you go.
one doesn't exist without the other. I don't like the saying you live to work and you work to live. No, I think that's a bit outdated. But
Yeah.
you're really right. They Generation Z in general, they are hunting for this kind of utopia where you can really have the best of both worlds. You can have a nice career, something that excites you, something that brings you joy. And that actually is not necessarily one thing. I guess we can thank the gig economy for this, but a lot of the people I know are quite interested in having several different vocations, several different activities at the
Mm.
same time. They are, I guess, influenced by the fact that there are these new jobs, such as influencer by day and
Hmm.
yoga instructor over the weekends. And then maybe you're studying to become a coding expert. So it's very interesting that work is not a place, work is not anymore one title, work is not even a company anymore. And I guess this is something that we need to get used to. We,
Hmm.
as their managers, their managers, we need to get used to the fact that they just see work in a different way. And whether it's for good or for bad, this is something that we need to adjust as we adjust to the change of seasons. And I guess they want their personal life because they're very much aware that they need to look after their body. They want to have the
Mm.
element of pleasure. They have access to so many different things we haven't. Low cost traveling,
Mhm.
Deliveroo, and all these different companies that bring food to you straight away, purchasing things online. Um, they're just so used to having this easy, right? They don't have to work for it the same way we have. I guess it is normal for them to at some point demand to have a holiday in Vietnam for 2 weeks and to have additional week and work from there. And
Mhm.
they don't see that as a challenge. They don't see that as a problem. As long as they have their computer or their mobile phone and access to
Mhm.
internet, they feel they can be absolutely productive. They are big fans of non-linear working day, which means 9 to 5 probably is not going to
Mhm.
be the best option for them. They want to have their Pilates class at 11, which is absolutely fine, right? Walk the dog at 12:30. For us, the millennials, that would be a fantastic scenario as well, because we can pick our kids from school as well and avail of this flexibility. They're big promoters of remote and hybrid as well, because they still want this
Mm.
kind of human interaction and conversations, which don't happen so easily, I guess, in a fully remote space. So they still keep their friendships, they still keep engaged with the community. Um, and they work because they want to work. They want to have something meaningful and to create an impact,
Mhm.
but not at making sacrifices in order to become rich and famous or anything like that. They just want to have this choice that I guess, we didn't ask for it.
Mm-hmm. I love the word integration. As I was kind of getting ready to ask my question, that is the perfect word.
Yeah,
Integration. It's not balance, it's all works cohesively together. That's the
absolutely.
word. That's the word of this podcast. Integration.
Yeah, agreed.
So we talked a little bit at the beginning about DE&I and about how this generation expects diversity and inclusion, and that it's very natural for them, unlike some of the previous generations. DE&I is obviously a staple conversation and topic that we like to pursue in every podcast. I would say here in the US, we haven't quite gotten it right yet. We've been at this for, over 30 years, and we still don't see the progress of women at the top, although we are making some progress in the C-suite and on boards. And I think some of our succession plans are starting to fill a little bit more. We are graduating more women from college than ever before, and Black women. So you're from Bulgaria and you've lived in Singapore and the US, and you're currently based in Ireland. So globally, what countries are getting DE&I right, and which countries are behind the curve, specifically for women as well?
See, that's again, it's important to look at it from different lenses, right? D&I is incredibly broad topic, and as you mentioned, it's focused on one side on gender, it's focused on ethnicity, it's focused on background, it's focused on parents versus people that don't want to have a family. So,
Mhm.
from my experience, I guess if we're looking at only, let's say, to give you an example, from my time in Singapore, I feel that Singapore is a country that is pretty ahead of the curve when it comes to
Mm.
digitalization. So ensuring that people are really aware of how to work with the different tools. They were one of the first countries to introduce e-government, so everything is online. But they also make sure that people are aware of the processes. So it's not only, oh, we jump into the innovation mode, but we forget about the users of these platforms. So on one side, they're the kind of country that provides a lot from learning point of view. For families, this is paradise, in my opinion. So if you're
Mm.
looking at, a country that has high level of security, stability, um, good overall climate, opportunity for your kids to attend good schools, find good jobs, have a high standard of living, Singapore is the place. Absolutely. If we change the perspective and let's say we look at LGBTQ, right? I would strongly say Ireland. For me, I have seen a lot more openness here than in other countries. Also, Israel. If I look at equality, right? Now Israel has a lot other challenges, right? But if we're looking
Mhm.
at particularly from diversity and inclusion and equality, they all go through the same kind of military education. For again, for
Mm.
better or for better or for worse, this is the way things are there. Um,
So the women go through the military.
Absolutely. And everyone is going through a 2 year, pretty robust training. Now, they might be positioned in different divisions, but they all go through the same kind of preparation. And
Hmm.
it is fascinating because I do a lot of work in Israel for the last 4 years, and they're really proud of that. They feel that this
Mhm.
is an added value for them. And whenever I'm working with them on helping with their resumes, with their LinkedIn profiles, for example, and these are young people, right? A lot of the times
Mhm.
when they join a course online, they're in their outfit, in their military outfit. And it is the case that they see it as a professional experience. they really see it as not as a course, not as something that is, must have, I need to do it. They're really, really proud of going through this journey.
Mm,
And I'm helping them to craft it in a way that other countries and, let's say, recruiters in different organizations would understand that this is not just military and focus only on this word army. It is actually a very, very interesting journey through project management, through leadership. Some of these 21, 22-year-old, they're responsible for a group of 100 people. And this
mm,
is one-on-one leadership session, right? Leadership coaching opportunity. So it's just a matter of understanding what are the skills that they deploy out of this journey, how they can help them, so how they can convert them into something transferable into the corporate world.
mhm,
And you see in the end of these sessions and these conversations, these young people, from being incredibly lacking confidence, all of a sudden they're like, wow, okay, so now I feel invigorated. Now I feel this is something I can play with. I can
mm,
justify it on an interview. And it is great to see how you can
mhm,
really press that right button and
mhm,
see how these people really embrace it. So I feel that, again, from equality, from diversity standpoint, they're very open-minded people. Um, these are countries that have paved the way in certain elements. In others, they might be lagging, but we are focusing now on the positives. Um, Again, it's challenging if I look at the countries in Europe, for example, because people might think, oh, this is Europe, but actually we're talking about completely different policies, regulations, a cultural background, historical background. We have seen a lot of changes lately in the legislation for young parents in
mhm,
the European Union, which is great. We have maternity leave, paternity leave, and parental leave,
mm.
which is fascinating, right? So it's not just for the mothers, it's not just for the fathers, it's for the parents, it's for the family. And again, going back to the work-life integration, there is a lot that we could do better, but at least these kind of conversations are now happening versus, let's say, 5, 6, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns that I have moving forward is that this young generation, Gen X coming in, has cited that they would forgo having a family, getting married, having children, having a family because of work. And, here in the US, we are trying to advance. This administration has really tried to uh, leverage legislation to help bring families together. We have a couple of key pieces of legislation that have been enacted in 2022 and 2023, the Pump Act and some other legislation that help these young families and help these women return to work. My biggest concern is that are the workplaces, beyond just legislation, really embracing the kind of culture and the benefits that they need in order to have families? I mean, we all want these young generation to have children and have families if that's what they choose. It seems like Europe is way ahead of the United States. Is there anything that you see from your perspective in Ireland, looking at the US, that US companies should consider doing differently to better embrace diversity in the workplace or be more diversity minded?
See, I wish I had this kind of wand where I can, change mindset, because you're
Mm,
so right. When it comes to innovation, when it comes to coming up with very, very fascinating policies and procedures and even ideas for training, everything comes from America. And I have worked with
mm,
mostly American organizations throughout my career. And one thing that I've always admired is, wow, how do they come up with all these great ideas? Yet,
mhm.
in terms of execution, in terms of following up, even, it's like a ticking box exercise sometimes. And it is a bit disappointing to see that you are great in one area, and this is the starting point, right? It is a
Mm-hmm.
marathon. It's not a sprint. You cannot expect a topic like DEI or mental health to be a once-off kind of scenario. There is the artificial bot, ChatGPT is going to solve it all for us.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Yet
No.
people feel that we have to look at technology for a resolution. I feel it's mindset. I genuinely feel it's mindset. And some countries have that naturally. And I've seen that in the Nordics, for example. I've
Mm.
always been fascinated by Denmark, Sweden, Norway, countries that don't even have to have these kind of discussions. They have it as a given. Men,
Mm.
woman, same rights, same opportunities. Whether you come with different religion, you come as you are. Our focus is the well-being of our citizens, and this is like it's so embedded in people's mind that you really don't have to even question it. It's there. You feel it. You really
Mm-hmm.
embrace it. So it's not just a ticking box exercise. It's really something that is promoted in a way that it's not brainwashing, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
borderline cult. It's really, hey, this is what we feel is the right approach. This is why. So it's backed up with science, with data, with numbers, and we just do it, right? And I guess one thing that I've seen that doesn't really work well is all of these great concepts and videos and tutorials about DEI coming from America to Europe. Europe is incredibly conservative. We tend to have very different perception of how things should be. And again, some countries have much more complex history in regards to religion, in regards to socio-political scenarios even. It's not one size fits all. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging as well, we shouldn't forget about this component. Um,
Right.
they look different in the different countries, and if an organization has variety of offices and global representation, it's about adjustment. It's about constant iteration, adjustment, and open conversation with the people that are actually impacted by that. Because again, I'm bringing the sentence I said in the beginning about Gen Z teaching me more than
Mm-hmm.
I am teaching them, because they're the ones experiencing the world. We need to listen to what they perceive as good, what they perceive as bad, because
Mm-hmm.
they're the future generation, and we need to adjust. We need to constantly make these small tweaks so that we continuously improve the situation, whether it's internally, whether it's externally. It all starts with mindset and alignment. I know it sounds too
Mm-hmm.
good and sounds too aloof, but I genuinely feel that this is the starting point.
Well, I think your point is so well made that there is so much that we can learn from this generation. And if we all just had these, if all the invisible barriers were gone and everyone at the table was just valued for what they actually brought to the table, their ideas, their innovation, their leadership, um, companies would see the value of diversity. So, all right. So now we're nearing the end of this podcast. I wish we could absolutely keep going, but at the end, we have this thing called rapid fire questions. So these are one sentence questions that we ask our guests so that our audience gets to know you a little bit better. Are you willing to
I'm,
play?
I'm ready. Let's jump.
Let's do this. So, who's getting Gen Z right today? And it could be a country or a company.
Hmm. I am probably a little bit biased, but I would say, based on my experience, Airbnb.
Interesting.
I would love to speak more about that, but
Oh, give me sentence 2 and 3 on that one.
okay,
We got to
okay,
hear
okay,
more.
okay, good. Um, this is a company that fascinated me from day one in terms of how they embrace diversity, how they speak about their culture and values. And it's stemming from the three founders and from the CEO, Brian Chesky. Everything they do is just so aligned to the values, to the culture, full transparency, and human first. I know I'm a
Perfect.
big promoter, but it was worth it.
So, listeners, go check out Airbnb. They're the model company. Who's your mentor or industry role model and why?
Oh, I've never had one only. I am excited about different people depending on the topics that they speak about. So
Mm,
I would straight away say Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist, a fantastic person,
mhm.
very positive, and
Yes,
I just love his podcast. I love his work. I'm following him everywhere. I'm reposting him. I'm his biggest stalker.
I love it. Stalk away. He is fantastic. And talk about transparency. He's incredible. What advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world? And what advice should they ignore?
Oh, love that. Love that. Oh, let me try to put everything in just one sentence. Okay, two things. Don't be afraid to ask for help or guidance. Don't be
Mm,
afraid. There are so many people that would give you this support. The second piece would be around try different things. Try, see what resonates with you and what brings you closer to your ikigai. This is a Japanese phrase Japanese word and concept that I'm absolutely passionate about. Don't follow a path that people think is good for you. Follow your own path. Loads of people give you advice and it's coming from a good place,
mm.
but the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
So true. What is the title of the best book you've ever read for Gen Z and why?
Oh, that's a very, very easy one. Um, Alice in Wonderland. And I know it's unconventional.
Do
I know.
tell. Okay,
I
this
know.
this this gets second sentence, third sentence, fourth sentence. Keep going.
I start almost always some of my lectures with a picture from Alice in Wonderland. And I speak to my student about the fact that the world can be very crazy. And you will meet crazy people, particularly when you're interviewing for jobs.
Mhm,
And you would meet people that might seem nice, yet they might not be nice.
mm,
Or people that seem different, but they might become your best supporters or
mhm.
mentors. And Alice's journey through Wonderland is exactly that. Is the element of growing through various different challenges and adventures until you realize who you are when you wake up.
Where can people go to learn more about you?
I am always on LinkedIn. So I guess the best place to connect with me, and I'm more than happy to connect with different people from any point of the world, any place of the world. So just look for Radina Walsh. I'm the one and only, and feel free to send me a connection request.
Today, we have been joined by Radina Walsh, founder, trainer, and talent manager of Vox Advisory. Thank you again for joining me, Radina. It's been such a pleasure.
Likewise, Berta. Thank you so much.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for watching. We would love it if you shared your thoughts on any of the topics we discussed in the comments below. And if you got value from the video, it would mean the world to us if you hit the like button and subscribe to the HR Morning channel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Voices of HR.